Hello everybody, and welcome again to my channel. This time I wanted to raise a question. That question is, does Watchtower literature have an expiration date? Now, the reason I'm raising this question is because if you have a discussion with one of Jehovah's Witnesses and you quote Old Watchtower literature, one of their default answers is, well, that was from whenever, 1950 or 1970 or 1980. That's old light. So inherent in that response is the fact that Watchtower literature has an expiration date on it. If it did not, the age of the literature you're quoting would not matter. And this, in fact, is one of the biggest weaknesses for those who are thoroughly indoctrinated. Because the point is rather easy to make. Well, if the literature from 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago is now out of date, how long is it until the current literature is out of date? And they might have different ways of responding to that. One individual said to me, well, do you hold the Apostle Paul accountable for things he did before he was a Christian? But here's the problem with that argument, is that the Watchtower did not claim to have a massive change from not serving Jehovah to serving Jehovah in any period. They have always claimed to speak for Jehovah. Henceforth, comparing the Watchtower organization to the Apostle Paul before and after conversion is irrelevant. So what you would have to compare the Watchtower to is the Apostle Paul after conversion. And the question is rather simple. Did anything the Apostle Paul taught after conversion ever go out of date? Did it ever become old literature or old light that was no longer relevant? So this is one massive problem that the Watchtower has, and it's one that I really think can be exploited to help individuals to wake up and realize what the real nature of the corporation is. Because if something printed as food for the proper time in 1974 is all of a sudden no longer food at the proper time, the reality of the situation is that it was never food at the proper time. Within my own lifetime, I was taught that the generation that saw 1914, which by my time included babies born in 1914, would not pass away before Armageddon had happened. Now, that teaching has gone by the wayside quite a while ago. That understanding was changed in 1995, and the understanding of what generation was has literally changed at least 3 times since then. One of those understandings was that the generation applied to the wicked people that saw the signs and failed to mend their ways. Another understanding was that the generation applied to the anointed. And the current understanding is that the generation applies to an overlapping generation, which includes those who saw the sign and were anointed, and anointed individuals whose life overlapped with those individuals who saw the sign. But there are massive problems with this understanding. And that is that for the current group of anointed to have been anointed, when the individuals that saw 1914 were alive, they actually would have had to go against Watchtower teachings. Before the generation that saw 1914 passed away, including the babies, the understanding was that the calling to be anointed ceased in 1935. And other individuals who were not alive in 1935 claimed to be anointed, but they were always looked at kind of with question, like, are you really anointed? So this second overlapping group would have had to been by far in a position which was not at all favored by the Watchtower. And the scapegoat excuse at that time was that, well, if some of the anointed fell away, that they would be replaced with new anointed. So that understanding has also changed, and now the calling is not closed, and nobody knows when it's going to be closed. And the obvious problem with that is that the number 144,000 is way too small, going all the way back to the time of Jesus up to now, for there to be that few true Christians. However, the point that I'm trying to make is basically Watchtower literature has an expiration date. And I think a good way to approach those who believe would be to use old literature on purpose. And when they say, well, that's old light and things have changed since then, say, well, how long is it going to be before you're saying the same thing about what's in print today? Because we all know it's only a matter of time until Watchtower changes their teachings. And for different teachings, that amount of time can be different. It might be a couple of years, might be a couple of decades. So I think that is a really strong card that we have to play, is the weight of evidence, which is available on the CD-ROM, demonstrates the things the Watchtower used to teach. If we utilize these when talking with individuals who are Jehovah's Witnesses, and they come back to us with, well, that's old light, say, well, at one time this was considered spiritual food at the proper time, served by Jehovah's organization, by Jehovah's Spirit-directed organization. And you can go to the references in the Insight book for name, which says that to speak in someone's name means to speak as that one's representative, and also the definition for inspiration, which says inspiration is the state or quality of being produced under spirit direction. So Jehovah's Spirit-directed organization, which means they spoke in his name and they were claiming to be inspired in not so many words, at one time served those things up as spiritual food at the proper time. Now we look back and we know that they're wrong, and people need to make excuses for that. So the question becomes, is when your history extends over 130 years and you have to explain away all of your old teachings as the light wasn't bright enough, or that's old spiritual food, that means there's an expiration date on it. So how long is the current spiritual food good for? When does that expire? We don't know. But if you bring that point up to people, that might be something that can help to get them to start thinking. Because I don't believe that it's possible to wake individuals up, but I do believe that the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses already have doubts, and I believe that anything that you can do to play on those doubts and to increase them is going to help speed the process or move the process forward at the very least. So I think this is a powerful tool. It might not have results right away, but it's something that could have results in the long run. So it's another tactic that you can keep in mind, because the Watchtower has no bigger enemy than its own literature. And the CD-ROM is proof positive of that. So anyways, that's what I wanted to share for this time. Thanks for watching.